U.S. Department of Defense. It's Department of Defense. Could be one of the departments. Could be Department of Energy. Because I'm trying to think why the Department of Defense. But anyway, he has a huge, somewhere with the government. That's his research project is with them. And his research project is a multi-year project. And overall, he's developing, with his team of researchers and his students now, he's developing a whole series of autonomous robots that will fly on the space station and communicate with each other. And so you can see those. There are 3 of them. They're about this big. They look like soccer balls, only they're red. Okay? And there were 3 of them, and they obviously fly. This is what we do. I mean, they move around in space, and they communicate with each other. And the reason that there were 3 is that they can triangulate their positions in space. And there's a whole series of mirrors, and it's an ongoing, year to year. It's been going on for a long time. This is a large, complex project. And so what he does each year is he carves out a piece of that research that's manageable for the students within the time period. Now this is a 2.5 semester course. Okay. But that they can have definite project objectives that they can complete and definite learning objectives also, obviously, by the end of that. So any of the materials and any of whatever they're going to need to do this, he buys it up, and any of the staff, he funds that out of his research money. Okay, so it's really complementary. The same thing that I know, for example, in the aerodynamics course, that instructor is working with a specific company, and a lot of times doing research for that company with his students. So the company is paying for that project, which is why when I said when they do reports on their project, representatives from the project in the company come to assess the technical briefings and the written reports, because they're not there just to see how the students are doing. They're actually using the data, the results that the students are collecting. In other cases where there is not that industry support, the department will support it. The department will also support sometimes students, 2 or 3 students get together, or even 1 student, and they have an idea of some kind of project they want to do, a research project. This was true, I know, when Dick Crowley was the department head. But he will often give them $50, $100, kind of a startup money to get them going, to encourage them to. But the project materials are never the responsibility of the student. Okay? So the course bears it. That's why those capstone courses can be, as you know, can be quite resource intensive. Okay? But and the other reason that they combine that with their own research is that it allows them to give that much time to a capstone course in teaching, because at the same time it's advancing their research, because they use their research as because that's also a big instructional staff in that capstone course. And I might say, in terms of how we integrate the communication. So does that kind of give you an idea about
Yes, very much. I was thinking about many things, like the attitude of the students when they know that the people that pay for the research is going to be there, and that they can be the people that will hire them when they get out of the university, and also how long were those projects? But you say that
that one is, yeah, that's a long one. But a lot of times you go to industry, and you probably do this too, and the industry gives you or asks you to do certain projects, and they may or may not pay you pay the students to do the projects, but they provide the ideas, they provide the real clients, and then they're involved in the assessment, and they can use those products. But, from my perspective, I don't know why we can't ask them to pay for that research, if they're going to benefit from the product.
But that was another question, that if we only could go to the classroom if it was a research project to the university or an industry, or if it was just like an industry idea for a very small thing, and they could say, please, I need ideas to develop this thing at my plant or whatever, so can you please help me out with this?
And I would think that as long as it's if it's relevant to either the instructor's research plan or the subject, and it's really going to, that I would think that's a very good source of ideas. Because then what happens is that the students know they're designing a real product for a real customer. And there's greater, and it does connect them, connects the students with the industry as well. But coming back to the capstone course, one of the ways that we have handled this whole communication, oral and written, is that we hired the department, I say we, the aerospace department hired someone from the English department. And part of, her name is Jennifer Craig, part of her teaching load in the English department is to work with the aerospace, and she works mainly in that, mainly in the capstone courses. We have a 2-semester research course with the students where they work in pairs, and we have a major capstone course. And her responsibility there is to, I'm not sure if she does, I don't think she addresses teamwork, but she helps them and helps prepare them for their oral reports. She helps them with their written reports. She helps them with their graphics. She coaches them, tutors. And when we do the assessment of the oral and written communication, she's a big part of that. So we brought her into the department, which is a little bit different from sending them to the English department. Okay? Sending them to the English department says, we're telling you it's important for engineers, but as engineers, we're not doing it. Now, even though Jennifer Craig's background is in English, she's not an engineer. She's working with the engineering staff. She's part of the functional team for making this happen. And it's much more, and they see that she's an important part to the instructional staff. And the engineers are saying, she's one of us, she's helping us with this. So there's a lot to that. We have try to do that too with the teamwork, and try to find someone in the university who's teaching teamwork. For some reason, now it may have happened, I have not been there on campus full time for 3 years now, so a lot has happened. But the attempts that we've made, the people just did not, I don't know if they were coming, forgive me Deanna, coming from business, but they just didn't have the right perspective on what it was like to be an engineering team. It didn't have the same integrating effect. And I just think it's because they didn't, again, find the right department or person to help with that. But that, in the long run, really the engineering faculty can, particularly when they've been doing, Dave Miller's been doing this capstone course for a long time. And he works so closely with industry and with the government organizations. What other questions can we answer?
Doris, I'm sorry, I have to keep on with the same topic because it's obvious that many people would be interested to go to MIT and to ask people, hey, I have this problem, can we make a joint research project, or I want your very bright students to work with me in this thing I have in my enterprise and everything. But sometimes it's not that easy if you don't have that high and...
If you are not MIT.
Yeah, exactly, if you're not MIT or something like MIT, right? So for us in design, we're a young program, but we see now that we have to make a stronger link with the industry, and then we're just like thinking about it. I know it's not a question for you, just like maybe a reflection for Javier and myself.
Yeah, but I can appreciate the difficulty of trying to make that connection, you know, with MIT. And it really does have to be a connection at the faculty level. In other words, for you to identify someone in interactive media design to invite you to campus. Okay. Because so many people want to visit MIT, okay, I mean, the faculty would be doing nothing else but entertaining visitors unless there was a connection. So they tend not to do that. I mean, at most, you could certainly come to MIT, but you would probably get the general tour of the campus with the campus people who do the tours. Except, I want to make the exception with, because you're in interactive media design, the media center at MIT, I'm not sure you're familiar with it, I think they're much more open to welcoming visitors and giving tours and making connections with the research. But it would be best to identify the people who are doing similar things with you and try to make that connection and get there. So I recognize that's very difficult. And the other thing that's now difficult for me to have to answer is that since I am not, because many people want to come, can we come and see your CDIO in action? Can we come and see that capstone course and talk to Dave Miller? Can we come and see them using the clickers, although you use the little clickers here? 3 years ago, I was said, absolutely come and visit, and I will host you. I will put you in contact with wonderful people at MIT, but I'm not on campus anymore. And so it's hard for me to say, and there really isn't, and Ed Crawley is not department head anymore. He's on to the Gordon Engineering Leadership Program, but even, you know, Ed has so many things going on that he really, even though he's, you know, the leader there in the CDIO, you can't ask him, I mean, you certainly can ask, but you're not going to go anywhere with that. And the people who were pretty active in CDIO have now moved on to the Gordon Engineering. So there really isn't any identifiable CDIO person who's still on campus. So, and so it makes it hard because I can't invite you to, I mean, I can certainly invite you to Sarasota, but I can't invite you to MIT and say I'm going to be there and I can host your visit. But what I can say is because in the last couple of years, LASPAL at Harvard is a member of CDIO, and we have worked very closely. And Angelica Natera, if you've met her, because she's here, Angelica Natera at LASPAL at Harvard puts together wonderful programs. She has great contacts in the Boston area. And if you contacted her and asked her, and she now is beginning to have some contacts at MIT. So through Angelica, you could see what's going on at Harvard, you could see what's going on at MIT, you could see what's going on at Olin College, where they're doing a lot of small college, I don't know if you've heard of Olin private college, privately funded, started within the last 10 years in the Boston area, but it's projects all the way through. The faculty are not in that tenure track system, so their focus is on teaching. And in fact, the very first class to come in, they design their own program. They design the students design the curriculum. Now they may have a little bit more established curriculum, but it's a very innovative approach. And again, Angelica has context there, and so she can set up a schedule for you to visit and see a lot of what's going on. So that would be my suggestion. That would be the best contact, other than specifically finding someone through the research. We were talking about how do you now, make some contacts with MIT to see what's going on, both in CDIO and in research areas, and the difficulty that is. And the difficulty especially because I'm no longer on campus. So I think Angelica knows that I keep sending everybody to her. She's the best, for me, she's the best person to be able to facilitate that. And if she's putting together a week-long program, it would be, she always includes that, and you've been to one of those, one of Angelica's programs at Les Val?
When?
Have you been to, did you go to the time they had the presidents from? Okay, so you didn't go to that. Your president did. But she always includes in that, visits to other, and invites in some.
I think Jessica was here when Professor
Yes.
Angelica is the contact person.
At Les Val.
With Les Val, with Harvard and MIT.
Yes, yes. Because we no longer have a good contact person at MIT.
Uno de los intereses especiales que tiene Angélica es el que conociera la universidad, que nos conociera a nosotros, etcétera, etcétera. Para eso es parte. Entonces ya Angélica es de la casa, ¿no? Y yo soy otra de la casa, entonces ya.
If you've not met Angelica, she is Venezuelan, so of course she speaks wonderful Spanish. And she's just a delightful woman.
No, Angélica makes a presentation about last Val works and
She
how.
is.
She-
Okay. All right. Let's, all right, let me just look at, Gonzalo, we looked at the questions for we talked about joining the CDIO initiative, and we looked at the questions, so everybody's familiar with them. So the last thing, oh no, I don't want to start that now. Daniel, did we answer all of your questions?
Oh, yes, Dory, very much, thank you.
Okay. Hey, how about anybody else on your list? Diana?
I have a question. How do you implement changes in your curriculum? I mean, based on the assessment results, how do you implement changes? Do you have any procedure in order to standardize the work in between departments, between programs? I don't know, how do you work with that, because it's so difficult.
Well, first of all, and I'll just give you MIT as an example, we don't have to worry about working between departments or programs because we're only one program. Okay, that's a CDIO program. And I will tell you that one of the things that has facilitated this curriculum reform and sustaining the interest and momentum, okay, because remember we talked about that, is that in that department, the faculty met for lunch every Wednesday. Okay? And for those first 2 years, 3 years, for a long time, 3 years, at least when Ed Crawley was the head of the department, the conversation at lunch, there was everybody ate first, and then there was usually a presentation of about 20, 25 minutes. And those presentations were about education. Okay, I was invited several times to talk about as we developed some of these instruments. So we talked about how courses were introducing new teaching methods, and some of those instructors who were now using Muddy cards for the first time talked about, or had been using them, talked about Muddy cards at lunchtime. Now, I mean, the faculty still meet, and I think it's still Wednesdays. Now it's moved much more toward faculty giving reports on their research. And the focus is specifically on new faculty and new researchers to have a chance to talk about their research with their colleagues. But in this movement of, so that, for example, when we got the results from the student ratings, we looked at them, okay, together, and decided if we needed to make some changes with something. And so it was in that regular meeting and regular conversations that we made the changes. But I want to come back to, I said there was no interdepartmental. We also made connections with mathematics and physics and made sure that we knew what was going on there, and there were some special projects where they engineering faculty identified specific mathematics applications that would be useful to the students, and then they connected with people in the math department who were willing to do that. So we're doing some cross-departmental. Now, the idea of establishing a standard approach to evaluation and continuous improvement, this happened only in the area of accreditation when it came time for ABET. When it came time for us to be reaccredited with ABET, there was a central office, a central person at the university who was helping all the program areas. And that group would meet
For the whole university, no.
for the whole, well.
In my case, it's only for one school.
Well, I'm sorry, it wasn't the whole university. When we do the regional accreditation, we have what's called, where are we? The New England Association of Secondary Schools and Colleges. That's a university, that's an institute-wide. And that one almost goes on without us. But when it's ABET, it's the School of Engineering, it's not the whole thing. But for the School of Engineering, there is a person who's identified, who's responsible for the standard approach. Okay? And so there's a representative from each engineering area and they meet again regularly so that they have a standard approach to prepare doing the self-study. And this person worked with all of the departments except aerospace, because I was in the department. They said, we're not going anywhere near you. You know what you're doing. I would still go to those meetings, but the person who was doing it, her name was Barbara Massey, and she as well had said she's been through 2 of these. She doesn't want to be in charge the next time. But she has a bigger job. She had all those other engineering programs. I only had one engineering program I can worry about. So, but that's about as far as a standard approach to assessment. Other questions?
I got a question, and I'm getting back to the rubrics. When you have the results of the rubrics,
Oh, yeah.
how do you analyze it? Does you have a committee of assessment, or it depends on the course professor? How is that procedure?
Yeah. The same person who does the assessment with written exams. If that's you make that final decision, you do the rubrics. Yeah, it doesn't have to be a committee decision. And it doesn't have to be an average of what everyone else says. Because you may, I think I said this before, you may invite feedback from other students, from anyone else, and yet in the end, use only your own evaluation of the rubric. And that's perfectly fine as long as the students know that's what's happening and why you want them filling this out. And it's going to influence, it may influence, but you don't have to, you don't want to put yourself in a position where now not only are you trying to average what's on a single form, you're trying to average what other people have said, you're making it harder than it has to be. But we never did finish that thing about weighting and about weighting, W-E-I-G-H, not ESPO. Putting weights on them. I would do that only at the end when I'm trying to come up with the final grade. And this goes in the syllabus, and it's probably in your syllabus. That written exams that you're going to use to, mostly for the disciplinary content, okay? Maybe it's 50% of the grade. So maybe you have 3 exams during the semester. Okay, I again would make it easy on myself. I would make it a number divisible by 3. Okay, so it's 60% of the grade. Okay, and maybe the oral presentation is 10% of the grade, and maybe the written report is 20% of the grade, and maybe you have 10% of the grade for participation. Okay, so that's why it means that you have to come up with a number in the end to find the overall average. Okay. So however you put your grades in, when you're grading a written exam, do you use percentage to report that, or do you use the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if you do that with your rubrics, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And however, if you give 2.5 and 3.5 and 4.5 in your written exams, use the same scheme and then just weight them the same way. So that, for example, let's say you're going to do participation, okay? Then, and you were going to do a holistic rubric, right? Maybe now you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so you get 5 points for participation throughout the course if all these criteria are present. Okay? Just make it as easy as you can, because the more complicated you make it, the less useful it's going to be for you.
Yeah, that I get it, but what I'm trying to ask you is that, well, you got the results, and like you have been you have 3 semester assessments, and you see that learning outcome is not so good so far. So how do you interact with the course to
What do you
get
do
better
with
than-
your, what do you do in the class?
Yeah. How do you see what is really happening? Is in your course or it is before?
Yes, how do you
Yeah.
decide if
If you
the
need
best
to-
strategy could be in the course or maybe
Backwards or?
in other courses?
Go and look at the other
Before.
course?
Yes.
This could be. This could be. Another way, we didn't talk about, but another way that some people use the rubrics, they of course fill one out for every student. But sometimes the instructor keeps like a summary rubric and puts on this summary rubric how many people have been checked for good, very good, or so you have, when you look at this one sheet, you have all of the ratings for all of your students in the boxes. I mean, just little check marks. Okay. Then it can help you to decide, okay, do I really have to pay attention to this? The next time we do an oral presentation, I may need to emphasize to the students, most of you did really not do a good job with maintaining eye contact. Okay, so we're really going to pay attention to that this time. We're going to practice this. We're going to practice some strategies so that I can have my information and yet still talk to my audience. Okay. Or you notice the students always have to have their little notes and they're reading from their note cards. And there's a very big difference. Okay. If I put it up on the screen, it's like having my note cards. I don't have all this information memorized. Okay. So I could, like talk to you and just keep holding my notes 40 hours this week. Or I can put it up on the screen, so when you're reading it, I'm also reading it. Okay? And it allows me to talk to you and give you the impression that I really know this stuff.
And how do you coordinate each faculty? Because I know that, for example, one course is taught by 2, 3 faculty members. How do you coordinate that they work in a standardized way in order to do the same with different groups?
This is what I'm saying, that you need to start small and have an agreement that these are the criteria you're going to use. So it's really helpful if you develop a rubric for communication that everybody agrees, this is easy to use, it gives us the important information, yes, I'll use it in my class. So then if you know that that's happening, and you know in which courses students are doing presentations, okay, then you go back to the person who had them before you and say, you know, I'm noticing that they don't know, they can't maintain this eye contact, or they're reading to the computer, okay? Or they're reading their notes without ever looking. Now I don't want you to think that I have any objections to people holding their notes, but you know that they're going to be nervous, that they're going to drop those notes. They say, oh yeah, I've done that, I've seen that, okay? All right. So that, you know, the department is small enough that you can do that. The same thing if we introduce a teaching method, like concept questions. When you introduce it, everybody who's using concept questions uses them in the same way. Okay? So the students get used to the format, the way of being asked questions, and the content changes. But again, if it's a small enough department, you can do that. Okay. When I say small enough, I don't mean it's small like yours. At MIT, the size of that faculty when we started doing this reform was about 30. So you're able to do this with. Now, we're all 30 people. That was another thing we have not talked about. We're all 30 people on board when we started this curriculum? Of course not. Remember that early adopters?
Yes.
We had early adopters among the faculty. Okay. That's what we talked when we talked about change. And we figured there were about a third, and a third. A third who were in the early adopters. A third who came on board, waited to see, waiting for the 5th version of iPad. In that next wave, okay? And then a third who, you stand on your head, you're not going to do it. There are people like me when we had color televisions out for years and years, and I was still looking at a 17-inch black and white. And I was in instructional technology as my major. The best, though, that you can hope for, which is what the situation at MIT, is that those people who did not want to get involved did not put up barriers. And that's doable. You move ahead. Okay. If they begin to put up barriers, then you have a problem. And you really have to address that. You can let them be neutral. You can't let them be negative. And you really have to, you have to say, look, you cannot get in our way. You don't have to do it, but you cannot get in our way. Particularly because they're working with the same students you're working with. And it was like those portfolios. It would just take 1 or 2 people to tell the students, this is silly, this is not worth your time, you have more important things to do. It makes it really hard. Other questions? Okay, I'm going to just go through with you this last one, this last handout that you have, which is called the standards. Okay. And these are the characteristics and I mentioned it earlier this morning. These are the characteristics of a CDIO program. Think of it as you will recognize a CDIO program if it has these characteristics. And they're going to be very clear to you, because that's what we've been talking about all week. Now, you don't wait till, and I mentioned there's a rubric for each one. You don't wait till you're at a 5, I think they're 0 to 5. You don't have to wait till you're at a 5 before you say, okay, now we can join the CDIO initiative. Okay? You join now, because one of the benefits of joining the organization is that now you have support from 60-something, 65 other universities. So Danielle, that may be another connection for you, is to try to identify within the CDIO organization who is doing a program in interactive media, and contact the CDIO program wherever it is around the world who's doing something close to interactive media. But that one may be hard, and make a connection that way.
Or at least design.
Or design.
In some way, yeah.
Right, right, and then maybe, and I think on the CDIO website it identifies the programs, the specific program that is using the CDIO approach. Okay, so here are the standards, and I mentioned them before, okay? These, I want to say, when you find these on the website, you should, what do you mean, nervous with that camera? This close. I already have a whole hour of a...
Where is our cameraman?
Yes, I know. And he's
His motto is a very
Esa cámara like
oh,
Nobody knows.
oh, Andres, did you hear that?
That's number 4.
Déjelos que luego están bien.
It should be, and I'm going to give you Juan Manuel, I'm going to give you this little task. Would you go to the CDIO website and look for the standards and see if it's version 2. It may still be version 1. And the difference is that version 2 has a rubric for each standard.
In the knowledge library.
Oh, where do you hide it? See, that's the other thing with that CDIO website. You hide things in... Oh, that would be a good way to get at it, though, if you search under CDIO standards, which you pull it up. Now
The
you...
CDIO standard version 2.
Version 2.
Customized programs.
Okay. So you have this document on the website. So you also have this handout. So what we say to a program when they're first applying is that within that first year of your applying and being approved, do a self-evaluation using the CDIO standards. And we ask programs, and we've actually done a survey now, maybe only twice, but must be every 4 or 5 years. We will try to do a survey. We'll collect the data from a number of institutions who volunteer to send in their information, but it's primarily a self-evaluation. And what it consists of, okay, what it consists of is, here's the standard, okay, your document will now give you an explanation, a description of what that means, but you know what that means. What evidence do you have that you are complying? Okay. And give yourself a rating using the rubric provided for that standard. So, as I mentioned before, when we first started, there was only one rubric, and you used it for all these. And it was a 0 to 4 rubric, and now it's a 0 to 5. And what actions are you going to take depending on what this rating is? Okay, here's the evidence you have, here's the rating. What's your next steps with regard to this outcome? And so you have, in the form that you have all 12 standards. Okay, so the pattern of the rubric is this. This is the general pattern. Zero. You have no documented plan or activity related to the standard. There's nothing there. Zero. One, you're aware of the need to do that. So you can get on the scale even if you haven't done anything, but you've recognized this is something you need to do. There's a plan in place. The plan is implemented. Okay? Now there's documented evidence of the full implementation and impact across. So in other words, you've begun to collect some evidence and you've documented that you have some evidence that you're in compliance with the standard. And the fifth one that we added says that we're using this, we're in a process of continuous improvement. We regularly review this standard in order to make improvements. So that's the general pattern, and you'll see that. So for example, here's the specific rubric for standard 3. And it should be in there. So here's the pattern. And remember with that, that's an integrated curriculum. No integration. Whoa, come on, Doris. This one. No integration of skills. In other words, none of those program outcomes are in your program. Okay? The need to do that is recognized, and maybe you have an initial mapping of disciplinary skills and learning outcomes underway. I would give you a 1 this week. Okay? You know there's a need to do it, and you've done some initial mapping.
The positive exercise.
Yes. Yes. A curriculum plan, you have a curriculum plan that integrates disciplinary, blah, blah, blah. So once you finalize your curriculum plan, your mapping, here you now see them, those program outcomes, into 1 or more years in the curriculum. Because you're more likely going to start with the first year with a new group coming in and migrate it upward, rather than trying to do all 10 semesters at the same time. There's an evidence now, you have evidence not only that they're in your curriculum plan, but they're being addressed in the courses responsible for the implementation. We get at that through the reflective memos. Because remember, that's one of the questions we asked. Which of the program outcomes do you address in your course? That's how we monitor that. We don't have a program outcome police who go into your course and see if they're in there. We rely on self-report from the faculty. And here, again, how is it part of your regular process improvement? Stakeholders, that could be you, just the faculty, could be faculty and students, but faculty regularly review the integrated curriculum and make recommendations and adjustments as needed. Okay? So same pattern, from there's nothing going on to it's a regular part of our curriculum process. But there's one that's specific for each standard. Okay, and this I don't have to go through with you. You know the standards. And here's, when we looked at this earlier this morning, examples of what constitutes, remember in that form it says what's evidence of compliance? Here's some examples that you could use. Examples of compliance, things that are in place now for each of the standards. Oh, so that's how it's set up. Here's standards 1, 2, 3, here's some examples. Here's standards 4, 5, 6, and here's some examples of evidence that you can cite that shows you're complying. And here's standard 7, 8, 11. Because look how it combines it. What happened to 9 and 10? 7 is about, are you teaching those program outcomes? Are they integrated into your courses? Are you using active and experiential learning? And are you assessing learning? Those 3 go together. Okay? And then here's some evidence of compliance with 7, 8, and 11. And then you have the 2 faculty development, enhancing faculty competence in the program learning outcomes, and enhancing faculty competence in teaching. And then the final one is, do you have a system in place of regular program evaluation, which we talked about earlier, and here's some of the evidence. We looked at this, oh no, we didn't look at this week, we looked at it in the conference. Did we look at this, Matt, this week? Okay. This is just, this is now my pitch for the collaboration, for the initiative. But as of May 1st, there were 60 university programs, 60 universities, which means universities have more than one program. These are 60 universities around the world who are members of the CDIO organization. And you see now in Latin America, now you're on region, and this is Unitec in Tegucigalpa, Honduras. This is Javeriana.
Very soon we have two.
And very soon, I think you will have 3. I think Universidad Nacional is also very serious. So I think within the next month or so, we may have applications from Nacional, from the electronic and electrical engineering department. And that's Fernando Herrera, who you saw in the photographs, and Luis Eduardo Gallego. He sometimes goes to Acofi, so you may know him from, oh no, we've had this conversation. Neither one of you remembers meeting each other, but you were both at Acofi in September. And these are Universidad de Chile, Universidad de Santiago de Chile, and Universidad Católica de la Santísima Concepción, in Concepción. Okay, so, and relatively, and before that, before January, you were part of the North American region. So now the North American region is just Canada and the US. And even though Mexico belongs to North America, in terms of the CDIO world, Mexico, well, there's no, will belong to Latin America, so Central and South America. So you see kind of how it, 14 in what they call the Nordic region. Nobody in Norway, many in Sweden, Denmark. Where did we put?
The Netherlands?
I'm just trying to think, not the Netherlands, but Belgium, but I think Belgium is in Northern Europe.
Belgium is near France.
Yeah, we had some kind, depending on when they came into the organization, some of those regions shifted about who belongs where. But this is the 8 over there of the UK is England, nobody in Scotland, nobody in Wales. So England and Northern Ireland, nobody in the Republic of Ireland. One of the very fast-growing areas, of course, is China. I forget how many. But the biggest conversation right now is this region in Asia. They are dividing a number of different ways, because you have Vietnam, you have Singapore, China, Japan, and depending on who was the initial contact and who they started working with, it could fall out that China will be its own region and this group will be a region. Australia and New Zealand, although New Zealand has not been active in a while, there's a region. There's a region for South Africa, and now there's still only one school, University of Pretoria. And in the U.S., somebody asked me that question, was it this week, who in the United States is a member? Oh no, that was a question at the conference.
What the question is the conference.
Okay. Let's see if I can do this. Let me do Canada first. You have University of Calgary. In the middle here, Queen's University in Kingston. École Polytechnique in Montreal. Wow, the fourth one in Canada. Maybe I'll come back to that.
North Victoria?
Nobody in Victoria. Oh, I know. Maybe British Columbia. maybe the University of British Columbia. Well, you can tell that they're probably not very active because I can't recall who the fourth one is.
I don't know, I remember that on the first conversation, I told you, you sent me, I told you that we have a teacher making a PhD in Victoria.
In Victoria, yeah, no, they didn't in British Columbia, but that would be a nice, no, Calgary is about as far west. There's somebody there in the middle, anyway, I'll think of it. In the US, it may be harder for me to come up with the 11, but let me start. In the Northeast, there's MIT, a small private college, not even a university, in New Hampshire called Daniel Webster. US Naval Academy, Duke University, Penn State, University of Michigan, and now Embry-Riddle in Florida. They're an aeronautical university. I have a big hole in the middle here. Arizona State, University of California, Northridge campus, University of Colorado, now the Post-Naval Graduate Institute in Monterey, who are going to host. See, that's another pattern, is when a new school joins, they're often very eager, and we ask them if they will host a meeting, because what does that do? If you host the meeting, it means we're bringing the introductory workshop to your campus, and it provides an opportunity for the campus-wide to have, because they don't all have workshops like this for a whole week. So it brings it, which is why I, I was kind of hinting that if, you do get your application in and you are approved and you present, in the fall, that by spring, you might host a meeting here in Cali for your region. So there's somebody up here that I'm forgetting. Anyway, University of California. So that's kind of where they are. And at the meeting last June, at the annual conference, there were another 5 or 6 universities added to that, and they're actually listed on the homepage of the CDIO. But as of May 1st, I handed over this map, and who belongs to what region, I handed it over, I think, to Bill Latond, or if anyone wants to take it over. I said, okay, I'm accounting for this only up to May 1st. I'm only tracking now Latin America. Okay. I'm not even tracking the U.S. anymore. I'm going to track only Latin America. And so you already know about the website, you know about the book, the workshops. There's an introductory workshop at every regional international meeting, and Gonzalo, I mentioned to the group, there is no need for anyone who's in this group this week to attend an introductory workshop. Okay? Because no one is going to do it as well as I do. No. Unless if you were to go to it, I would say, if you go to this introductory workshop, if you're there on that day, go to the first session, the CDIO overview done by Ed Crowley. I mean, it is worth the price of admission, and you have heard Ed Crowley. Now, he's been doing this for more than 11 years, and he usually does that introductory session. And over the 11 years, I have probably heard him at every one of those workshops. But it is just so amazing. He talks about, he gives that overview as this, it's the first time he's done it, and this is, he has the same, I'm always just so amazed. And I even come away and have learned something new even after 11 years. But it is not that the other presenters are not wonderful, but there really is something special about Ed's presentations. If you can, try to get to an international conference. And now it's become like the Olympics. People are vying or applying to host the conference. And so we must have this set now for at least 5 years. So I said, oh my gosh, and And it got to a point where we had to have people apply to be the host. So I said, this is like the Olympics. So this is why I know that 2013, it's MIT Harvard. So, and then you now know that in your region, it's Javeriana and Universidad de Chile. And so one of the things you might, well, first of all, it would be good to know which programs, and I know that at Javeriana it's electrical engineering, electronics and electrical engineering. And Universidad de Chile, is that mechanical?
System engineering.
It's systems engineering, okay. So, to make those connections would be good. And one of the actions, or that's what I thought we could talk a little bit about it. One of the actions now that I'm going to take upon myself is that I would like to contact those 5 schools in the Latin American region now and go back to them and say, okay, now that you've been introduced, you've been working on this, you have a curriculum plan, would you be willing to share with, I want to sell the Dropbox, would you be willing to put in the Dropbox samples of what your learning outcomes look like, what your curriculum map looks like, so that I'm not still showing Unitec's very first early draft. It was like taking all those little stickies and making, a map out of that, which is not what they ended up with. Just so that we can have some examples to share, and if systems engineering has already put together that information, it's very useful information. All right, so where do you go from here? Besides lunch. What is going to be your next steps? What are going to be your next steps now? Now, this is not a test. This is just generally have you thought about.
We have to rethink many things that have been done in this year, telematics at least.
I think we need to do many things. One many thing is to review all the process and review the assessment that we define. And taking with this assignment open this assignment in learning objectives and evaluate this learning objective, at least with the system engineering that is the program we are more on. And starting in a good process with telematics as quick as
In
possible.
system engineering, we have a project more advanced. I think that it's necessary to adjust our learning outcomes. I think that possible is necessary to adopt a CDIO learning outcome and adjust this outcome with ours.
We have done the first work, the sticky notes.
Oh, yeah.
Right. That's right.
We have one very big confusion about assessment, learning outcome, and no, it's
Competence.
competency. Express.
Right. Did you know the people who are involved or who need to be involved, and that group is going to continue with this?
The team is here, and it's the core of it's a very good thing of this workshop. The core group that to make the curriculum reform is here, stay here for 1 week. I think it's more clear for what we think is very important to have this kind of this group of people that knows all the process. And maybe in the process we have many questions, more questions, but.
I'm going to change my email address. No. What about the lado tranquillo over here? What is, this is where I come when I need to rest and think. Where will you go from here? Will you, because you're in accreditation, right?
Yeah.
So you'll be continuing to work with the, do you think that
Pues a nosotros nos quedan muchas reflexiones. No sabemos si sea ideal implementar CDIO en diseño, no sé qué contradicciones hayan ahí, pues en principio ninguna, pero pues habría que revisarla. Es importante haber participado porque nos damos cuenta que estábamos haciendo procesos pero a ciegas, digamos, en claridad. Iniciamos un proceso de formulación por competencias pero sin tener claro todo el proceso.
Are there more than just you and Danielle in your program?
Sí.
Just the two of you?
Otra cosa que he estado pensando, el departamento de diseño terminó un proceso de reforma curricular. Yo con estos ojos voy a adentrarme a revisar, porque creo que los ojos nos han cambiado y la mirada nos ha cambiado poderosamente. Y en vez de seguir en un proceso que pues, es una reformita curricular, bueno, yo sé que ustedes tienen mucha cosa de assessment, mucha cosa de competencia, probablemente no consciente en diseño, pero yo creo que debemos revisar exactamente, no es la matricita, lo que hizo el diseño es la matricita chiquita. Y creo que esto es un trabajo mucho más detallado. Yo creo que una de las cosas fundamentales, yo le decía a Lucelena esta mañana, una de las cosas fundamentales aquí es que uno define la competencia, tiene que definir los objetivos de aprendizaje y debe poder medir los objetivos de aprendizaje. Es la única forma y ver en qué curso se compromete. La única forma, ese es el proceso. Puede sonar muy sencillo ahora, pero eso yo por lo menos no lo tenía tan claro como ahora. Y creo que nadie de nosotros...
Pues es que todos nos estamos con la matricita pequeña y ya nos dimos cuenta que no,
en teoría lo hizo ver muy claro.
Eso es como un saludo a la bandera.
sí, sí.
Y otra cosa que Doris aportó mucho es sobre todo la parte de evaluación.
Sí.
Cómo hacer para aterrizar todas las cosas y para decir realmente que los muchachos sí están logrando eso. Nos quedó claro cómo hacerlo con la parte de innovación.
Cosas diferentes al conocimiento.
Yo siempre, esa era una de mis inquietudes y yo hablé con Doris específicamente, yo le dije a Doris, como yo sabía que Doris sabía de assessment, entonces yo quiero especialmente, y Doris por completo, yo quiero especialmente hacer énfasis en eso porque tenemos una confusión tremenda. Y si usted no hace los objetivos de aprendizaje y no evalúa, olvídese, no hizo nada.
Gonzalo, y puede que, continuando con las flores para Doris, para nosotros ha sido muy importante que un tema del que probablemente uno puede haber hecho muchas reflexiones, entenderlo como un proceso, ver muy fácil cómo valorar aquellas cosas que no estaban, por ejemplo, para el tema de trabajo en equipo, cosas que uno tenía la duda y cómo incorporar esos elementos transversales en el currículo de cada curso.
Incluso tengo una propuesta ya pensada, proponer suprimir el curso de liderazgo. No tiene sentido tener un curso de liderazgo en el currículo del núcleo común de los guerreros. ¿Cierto?
Sí, ¿por qué no?
No tiene sentido.
No es sino borrar una fila en una...
No tiene sentido.
Estoy de acuerdo.
Y le voy a decir por qué. Y le voy a decir, un momentico, y le voy a decir por qué. Porque es que el liderazgo es una de las competencias que hay que transversales. Entonces entonces si tenemos el curso de liderazgo tenemos que tener un curso de espíritu crítico, de trabajo en equipo. En la misma lógica, entonces o lo hacemos así o lo hacemos de otra forma. En cambio, si usted se compromete con la competencia y con el objetivo de aprendizaje, usted tiene que ver y garantizar que en el currículum al final tiene eso. Apenas en ese sentido hay que actuar. Si somos consecuencias tenemos que actuar.
Yo no estoy de acuerdo hasta que no se revise el curso y se mire de pronto si hay elementos. Yo no sé de liderazgo, yo no sé si probablemente sí hay cosas muy puntuales que deban ser introducidas en el curso. Yo creo que eso está bien, pero hay que...
No, pues yo simplemente estoy lanzando...
¿Qué piensas? No porque no, sino porque...
Porque es que la competencia de liderazgo, o sea, no es que yo tampoco me conozco el currículum.
Bueno,
realmente yo
tenemos que mirar,
tendría que mirar también el
hacer un
currículum.
ejercicio.
Yo lo digo en términos del currículum de nosotros, obviamente no he visto con detalle ustedes, pero para introducir una competencia tan importante como el liderazgo y trabajo en equipo tiene que ser en ese curso, y ese curso lo hace muy bien según el contenido, es el mismo. De hecho, les digo, los resultados que nosotros hemos tenido, y tenemos muchachos de ingeniería, se los puedo compartir y todo, no salen bien. No salen bien con la metodología que utiliza Juanita, o es todo lo que está haciendo, no está
Es que yo sé que no salen bien.
competencia.
Diana, yo sé que no salen bien, y yo sé que no salen bien, ¿por qué? Porque como es una cosa puntual, y en el currículum nosotros decimos la responsabilidad del curso de liderazgo.
Pero más que tu argumento está llevando a que sí lo eliminemos.
No, porque por eso le digo, no conozco que en qué otros momentos ustedes hacen ese tipo de trabajo.
No, es que lo que
no
estás
sé,
diciendo,
si no hay otro, obviamente lo que tú dices
es que lo que
cierto,
estoy diciendo
tendría
es
que
que,
incluirlo.
claro, yo estoy de acuerdo con lo que plantea Hugo. Si vemos que la cosa es tan importante como que para tener que concentrar el curso, la concentramos. Pero es que le hemos dado la responsabilidad del curso de liderazgo a un curso. Le hemos dado la posibilidad del curso empresarial a otro curso.
Claro, solamente tienen un momento
Pero es por el enfoque
Ese es el
disciplinario.
problema, que no saben
Esto no
que...
necesariamente.
Again to the white side.
En ingeniería industrial debería tener otro.
Hay otro problema
Industrial, ¿no?
It's a
organizar el semestre en el que aparece.
Bueno, pero eso no es tan importante.
Bueno, como que nos importa.
No, que esté estandarizado el semestre.
Yeah, that's just on that,
No tiene por qué estar.
Claro, si es una competencia en ingeniería y
Porque sabemos.
Tenemos que venir claramente el momento donde para
Claro, para nosotros.
Pero es que mire, el problema es de nuevo, el currículum construido a base de contenidos, sobre base
Claro,
de...
es que esa es la cosa. O
Vea,
sea,
eso es que
eso nos pasa a nosotros también en varias
eso
cosas.
es, y todavía, eso es el pasado, tenemos que ir evolucionando hacia el futuro, tenemos que ir cambiando mentalmente, también tenemos que cambiar. Yo sé que no puedo decir un plumazo, yo le digo a Ida Florencia Medina, que primero el curso de liderazgo de un infarto y me la gano en el INGA toda la vida. ¿Qué conversación?
Ese es mi mensaje, hay que mirarlo, hay que revisar.
Ella me dice,
Debería ser antes de poner.
no,
Yo lo pensaba que fueras antes de lo que yo doy.
Lo mismo que las competencias.
En México tenemos un problema clarísimo y tenemos que a nivel institucional incluso de
okay, hold on, we didn't hear from industrial, and industrial engineering, what is going to be, what direction do you think you'll go in after this for industrial?
Pues nosotros hasta ahora vamos a iniciar la revisión del programa. Entonces pienso que pues, lo que hemos aprendido en estos días nos va a servir mucho para iniciar a hacerlo con una buena metodología. Creo que eso es una ganancia para nosotros, porque lo vamos a hacer con la metodología. Tendremos que pues validar algunas cosas, pero creo que eso es muy importante. Y la otra cosa también importante es poder ver que todo lo que nosotros establezcamos a través de competencias, al final lo tenemos que medir. Y usted pues nos dio muchas herramientas para poder hacerlo bien, sin entrar de pronto en una camisa de fuerza y en cosas demasiado complicadas que lleven a desgaste también del profesor. Porque en eso usted nos hacía énfasis.
Gracias. Andrés.
Nosotros, Elena y yo, tenemos a cargo cada uno un programa de estudios de especialización de adultos. Son programas de un año. Tenemos que tomar todo esto y ver cómo se aterriza en ese tipo de programas.
¿Cómo se integra?
¿Cómo se integra?
In the postgraduate study, we need to do a similar work. But I think our main effort was in the undergraduate courses, especially in system engineering, telematics engineering. In the future, we will start with industrial engineering and then interactive media design. This is the time.
Doris, I think that curriculum design is a process is a model, needs timing, needs harmony, needs resource. I think that is very important for us to consider each part of the system.
So let me ask now, what actions would you like me to take in the coming weeks? How can I facilitate in some way? Because I feel as though our collaboration, our working together doesn't end with Kate this afternoon. So, if there are, certainly always feel free, if you think, well, I can't think of anything now, but next week, oh, I really wish you would, could you send me an example of, or send me a sample of, you have my email address, but, and I'm perfectly willing to do that.
And maybe to pair us with some other design, as we said before, that would be very good for us, to other design programs that you might know.
Somebody make me an action list so that I don't forget that. Somebody make me an action list to try to find partners for interactive media design, both at MIT and in the CDIO.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
We'll
What would help for me is if you have a sort of a short description of that curriculum, just so that I'm interpreting interactive media design the same way that you do it. That would be great, and then I'll follow up on that. How else can I help? Would it help if some things that I can think about, when we talked about reflective memos, there were a couple of instructors at MIT in the Department of Aerospace whom I've asked if I could use their reflective memos as samples and could I share those with others. So I know I have at least Ian Waits. I may have a couple of others. So if there's an interest in that, would you like to see a sample of what a completed interactive? A completed, okay. I got something, I can put it in the Dropbox. And again, I'm just reminding you, if there's anything in that Dropbox that you want, don't wait too long, because I don't know what's going to happen to that Dropbox. I am going to be buying a new computer when I get home this week, so it probably won't affect that, but let's make it. If there's anything you want before I delete the Dropbox, put it in, but I can do that. Put that on my action list. How else can I?
I think that we will rethink about the matrix and somewhere, and when we finish that project, I'm sure we will send to you the.
Right. The other thing too is as we've gone along, I've kind of indicated people whom I think would be, good consultants or presenters around these issues. If that's useful to you, it's probably more useful to the people who are running a region, kind of a speakers list. I'll share it with them because I think of, other people who can help you along in this process.
I think also we need to do one exercise is to make this evaluation, self-evaluation.
Yeah.
How far
we have made mentally
how far we are. How far we are.
We are level 1.
Level 1. Right. When Doris is talking, I make an internal evaluation. I think we are at least it's level 1. Huh? And some aspects is level 2, but normally it's level 1.
Yes.
And see how he did that. He didn't average, because you might have gone through and you got some zeros and you got ones and you got twos. He didn't average. When he looked across, he said, overall, I think we're a 1. That's what you do with those rubrics. Okay? You can go in at an average and get a 3 on this one and a 4 on that one. But it's kind of overall, this is where we are. So the real value in this is saying, okay, in July of 2011, here's where we are. A year from now, where are we? Okay, it's camera time.
The professional is coming.
Okay, do you want us to go outside?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's picture time, and then it's lunch time. And what did we decide? We are not going to gather after lunch? but we are going to gather.
Con el permiso de Doris, estoy creando el blog, colocando un blog, los clips que sacamos aquí durante todo el seminario, que puede ser un documento de ayuda, de mostrarle a otros, de difundir. Lo encuentran en icesi.edu.blogblogs/number 4. Y ahí está la conferencia también de Doris que dictó el día de ayer.
Okay. Doris, advierto que Milena trabajó toda la mañana cosiendo esta mochilina.